Woke Supremacy News.
President Biden issued a stark warning about what he sees as the clear and present danger to American democracy.
As I stand here tonight, equality and democracy are under assault. We do ourselves no favor to pretend otherwise.
The president also wasted no time calling out his predecessor.
Too much of what's happening in our country today is not normal. Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans represent an extremism that threatens the very foundations of our republic. Now, I want to be very clear up front. Not every Republican, not even the majority of Republicans are MAGA Republicans. Not every Republican embraces their extreme ideology. I know, because I've been able to work with these mainstream Republicans. But there's no question that the Republican Party today is dominated, driven, and intimidated by Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans. And that is a threat to this country.
The president's speech from Philadelphia's Independence Hall came just 68 days before the midterm elections. There were also some developments today in the Justice Department's investigation into those classified documents that were seized at Mar-a-Lago. Lawyers for Donald Trump and the Department of Justice came face to face in a federal courtroom, arguing over Trump's request for an independent third party or a special master to review what was recovered. Our own Peter Alexander has more.
Mr. Trump's lawyers arguing the judge needed to help restore public confidence by allowing more transparency into the government's actions and dismissing the investigation into the former president's keeping highly classified documents, comparing them to an overdue library book. The Justice Department opposes an independent review of the documents, saying they've already gone through them and acknowledging more than 500 pages may be protected by attorney-client privilege. The DOJ argues the classified documents belong to the U.S., not to Mr. Trump. Quote, because he is no longer the president, he had no right to take those documents. The judge today also saying she'll make public a more detailed list of what the FBI seized at Mr. Trump's estate.
The judge is expected to rule on the special master request in the days ahead. And tonight we learned one of Trump's allies, former White House Speaker Newt Gingrich, has been invited to speak to the January 6th committee. They want to ask him about emails he sent to Trump advisors concerning misleading TV ads about the 2020 election. And NBC News has confirmed former White House counsel Pat Cipollone and his deputy, Pat Philbin, are testifying tomorrow before a federal grand jury investigating the insurrection. Today, a retired NYPD officer received the longest sentence yet in a case related to the Capitol riot. Thomas Webster. He now faces 10 years in prison for attacking a D.C. police officer with a metal flagpole. Today, Donald Trump said he is offering financial support to some of the January 6th defendants, and he also made this promise. If he's
doing on whack job and a nut. This guy should not be the nominee. He shouldn't be governor, but I'm not getting involved in endorsing in the race. But this is not just Maryland. This is happening across the country.
He's talking about things that are absolutely false, defamatory, slanderous. It's all he knows what to do, apparently, because he's still upset that we trounced him and his candidate.
As you just heard, the split in the Republican Party is on display in the Maryland governor's race. Current Republican governor, who you saw right there, Larry Hogan, has made it abundantly clear he will not support his party's nominee for the office. And lately, some Republicans, like Maryland's Trump-endorsed Dan Cox, who easily won his primary, are getting a run from their money from Democratic opponents like Wes Moore. I had a chance to speak with Moore a few days ago about his campaign and what it will take for Democrats to win, not just in Maryland, but across the nation.
I look at Maryland, in many ways, people call it America in miniature, right? We also know that so many of the challenges that you see around the country are right here in the state of Maryland. We could have some of the best medical institutions in the world right here in the state of Maryland, and you have people who live down the street from them who can't afford basic care.
Why? Why is this state, even this city of Baltimore, divided like that?
I think you have to be intentional about inclusiveness, and you have to be intentional about not leaving people behind.
Those are fancy words. How would you solve it?
You know, when I think about the work that we were able to do when I ran one of the largest poverty-fighting organizations in this country, you know, the work that we were able to do is say that our policies need to actually reflect our values. It means creating an education system that is not leaving children behind or having when they leave high school that they're not prepared for the jobs of now or for the jobs of the future.
Crime is an issue in Maryland, specifically in Baltimore and across the country. You are seeing more and more voters put crime as their #1 issue.
Yeah.
This city that we're in has had 200 murders this year. That's basically a person dying every day. How are you going to solve for that?
Well, I can tell you the issue of crime is not just important, it's personal. I'm a very proud Baltimorean. It's also something that the city alone should not have to wrestle with. This is where partnership matters. You can take state resources, put them on loan to the city of Baltimore to be able to help address that. Investing in the violence intervention programs like Safe Streets and We Are Us. These are programs that the data shows and are proven to work. And right now they are underfunded, undervalued, and we have to change that from day one.
How do you feel then about the term defund the police? Because it's put a brand on Democrats that doesn't align with what you're talking about.
I don't think that the answer is defund the police, because I think defund the police is more of a slogan than a strategy, right? The strategy that we have is just fundamentally going back to the idea that everybody has a right to feel safe in their own communities. And they want to know that if something happens and they call on law enforcement to be able to protect them, that the response is going to be quick and the response is going to be supportive. That's all communities are asking for, and that's not a Republican issue nor a Democratic issue.
Right around this time last year, you and I spoke. It's why I wanted to talk to you today. You were the first person I interviewed on TV when the U.S. pulled out of Afghanistan. Where are you on this now that we're a year out?
It's still painful. It's painful because it's personal. I think the decision to withdraw was the right one, and frankly, it was just an overdue one, and I'm glad it was one of the first things that the administration put into place. The thing that we also have to consistently remind the American people is that just because people made it home does not mean the support ends there. You know, thank you for your service cannot be the end of a conversation all the time. Thank you for your service.
Shouldn't just get 10% off at Denny's.
There you go. It shouldn't just be, you know what, I'll buy this person a coffee when I see someone in uniform at a coffee shop, right? Thank you for your service actually has to mean something. We have people who, when our country asked them to serve, they didn't ask the country to wait. And so when they come back home for them and their families, our nation should not be asking us and our families to wait. Honor your promises.
You are running against somebody who's not looking for unity in any way. Dan Cox is an election denier. He has come out and said he would look to have Maryland State Police go after Joe Biden for the lawful Mar-a-Lago search. How do you respond to that?
I respond by first making sure that people know who our opponent is in November. And I'm very clear, you know, I don't have an opponent in November. This is a threat. This is someone who asked for Mike Pence to be hung because he certified an election. You know, this is a person who the current governor, who's a Republican, when asked, would you support my opponent? His response was, I think he's mentally unstable, and I would not give him a tour of the governor's office, let alone do I want him to be the next governor.
Wes, I did a double take in the last week when I heard the current Republican governor say those things about your opponent. He has said he's a QAnon crazy. And then over the weekend, I'm looking, and I see Wes Moore at an event with Larry Hogan. Are you seeking his endorsement? Because if you got the Republican endorsement from the governor, that would be enormous, not just for you in the state, but a statement to this country.
I want to be very clear that I would love his support and the support of anybody.
Have you asked him for it?
I have not asked him for his official endorsement yet.
Why not?
Maybe I should right now. No, but I would love the governor's support because I'd love the support of anybody who believes that our vision and our values are better reflective of the vision and the values for the state of Maryland than my opponent.
But here's the thing. Governor Hogan did endorse a Republican primary candidate, and Dan Cox beat them handily. What does that tell you about the Republican voter in this state?
I believe that Republicans need to be able to hear what the alternative actually is. You know, when we're going all around the state and people are telling us, you know, you're going to a lot of places that there's not a lot of Democrats. My answer is, yeah, but there's a lot of Marylanders. And I plan on being their governor, too.
Do Marylanders realize they could elect somebody who could really hurt abortion access? Something people in Maryland, much like people in New York, we take for granted.
Yes. I mean, I'm running against an opponent who, the day after the Supreme Court robbed millions of women of health care, his response was to praise Donald Trump and praise the Supreme Court, and then said he would double down by essentially criminalizing all abortions, even in the case of incest and rape. That's my opponent in November.
The latest move from the Supreme Court is scary. Irrelevant of how you feel about abortion rights, this is the first time we've seen the Supreme Court start to take things away. Yeah. What does that tell you about where we are?
What it tells us is we have to remember that, that progress is not guaranteed. We've got to fight. Every day we have to fight for what makes this country so beautiful and so important, and what makes it worth fighting for. Time alone and duration does not make progress. It's hard work, it's determination, and it's being assertive about what our values are and standing up for our values. That's what makes progress.
My thanks for Wes Moore for that conversation.